All right. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Cool Beans Hot Stuff. Today is Thursday. And to anybody who's new to my channel, well, let's be real, anybody who's watching is probably new to my channel, except for Cutie Pie. If you're checking this out for the first time on YouTube, the way my Twitch channel, which that's what this is, recording from my Twitch channel, the way that I have it structured is every day I cover a new topic for a couple hours, do some research into it, things that I think are fun and enjoyable. And every Thursday, I go over conspiracy theories. And I'll be honest with you, the conspiracy theory Thursdays kind of kick my ass. They're the day of the week that involves the most research, right? But I still do them because I have a lot of friends and family who really enjoy conspiracy theories. So it gives me getting better at muting those burps. It gives me an opportunity to dive into some of the conspiracy theories that are out and about, do a little research, and then maybe inform you guys, the viewer, on it. That's what I usually do on Thursdays. But today, we're going to go ahead and pretend like it's not Thursday, and we're going to make it a Friday today, right? So Friday's coming early this weekend. And instead of doing conspiracy theory Thursdays, I'm going to do my regular Friday routine, which is Film Buff Friday. So today is Film Buff Thursdays, which still kind of has a ring to it. Doesn't sound all that bad, right? So it makes sense to swap it over. I'm actually swapping it over. Today I was going to cover the conspiracy theory if Tupac Shakur is still alive. That was the conspiracy theory we were going to cover. Instead, I wanted to go ahead and get in my Film Buff Fridays because tomorrow, actual Friday, me and my girlfriend are going to be flying out to Oklahoma to spend some time with the parents. So since I'm going to be on a plane tomorrow and I'm going to be in Oklahoma for the next few days, I won't be able to do Friday tomorrow, right? And if I had to give you my honest, if I had to be honest with you, I prefer Film Buff Fridays over Conspiracy Theory Thursdays. And the material that I'm covering on Film Buff Fridays, I don't really want to miss a day. I'm trying to kind of get over this hump of doing streams specifically about almost only exclusively on my Film Buff Fridays about learning about film theory and film analysis. I think it's still good to learn about these things, and I'll definitely continue to be doing streams about them, increasing my knowledge base, helping the audience increase their knowledge base. I think it's a good idea to learn how to review films, improve on media literacy. If any of you spend any amount of time in Reddit, you will have heard that term before, right? Every time somebody disagrees with your take on a view, is, oh, you lack media literacy, bro. And so now you can say, actually, I don't, because I watch Cool Beans Hot Stuff and he told me all about it. So we're going to still cover film theory and elements of film analysis, and I'll even be covering a lot of story analysis for books, doing book reviews. Eventually, though, I'd like to get into doing actual movie reviews and book reviews. And hopefully, by the time I get into that and I cover all these other topics that kind of lead up to it, I'll have a much bigger audience over on Twitch, and I'll be able to actually converse with people in the comment section about the film that we're reviewing, right? I thought it'd be fun to do film reviews and do live watches over on Twitch, too. I'm pretty sure YouTube isn't going to be okay with that. I've only done three of these. This is my third week. So I've only done two Film Buff Fridays, and both of them already got not copyright strikes, but copyright claims because I showed a 5-second clip of a movie. And it's in the middle of a stream that's supposed to be about educating the audience, but I still get a copyright claim. So I imagine I'm going to have to battle the shit out of those copyright claims once I start doing actual like movie watches. But I'm still going to give it a shot, see what happens. I still think it'd be really fun to watch a movie live with the rest of the audience and be able to have a conversation about the movie while we're watching it and do some film analysis on the movie while we're watching it. I think that would be fucking dope, right? Grab some popcorn, do the film analysis in real time. That would be a blast. So I'm working up to that point though, because I myself, I've been doing like film analysis for a while, but I'm really, where my expertise lies, because I'm a writer. I write stories. Right above me in those blue letters on the screen, you'll see my Substack where I post the some of the short stories that I write. Uh, Most of my analysis comes from a narrative aspect, right? So when I'm analyzing films, I'm looking at it from character, I'm looking at it from the plot, I'm looking at it from like the setting and how that interacts with the story and all of the characteristics that would traditionally just go into a book, right? So I'm not looking at a lot of the things that a film analysis and a film critic would look at or a film theorist. So I definitely need to catch up on that side of the like education, right? I need to educate myself on that sort of thing, which is what these streams are about right now. That's what this stream is about today. But since I do, I want to do the research, and I also want to get the research over with so I can get to actually reviewing films. We're going to go ahead and skip the conspiracy theories today, and we're just going to go deep dive head first into what would be my next Film Buff Fridays. And today, well, tomorrow, what that would have been, what is now today, I'm going to be covering the 8 elements of film theory, right? So in film theory, if you haven't been paying attention, if you don't know anything about film theory, then I suggest you check out my other videos on my YouTube channel. That's Cool Beans Hot Stuff on YouTube. And over there, I'll have all the last 2 weeks worth of film theory videos that I've done. They're up as we speak. And even though they do have some copyright claims, or you can still see them, they're still visible. I just can't make any money off them, which is fine because as right now, I think I got like 10 views on my #1 video. So I'm not making any money anytime soon anyways. So that's totally fine with me. But there is a lot of really good information in there about film theory, what it is, what is film analysis compared to film reviews versus film theory, separating all of them from each other. Today, we're going to deep dive into an aspect of film theory that is definitely one of the most important, the 8 elements of film theory. So if you haven't gotten caught up on film theory, go watch those other 2 videos. But in the meantime, just a brief explanation. Film theory is essentially a way of analyzing a film. Okay, there's a multitude of different film theories that exist, right? Here, we're going to go ahead and I might end up ranting. Not for long, though, but we're going to go to my rant screen while I'm ranting. Then we'll come back. But there's a film theory. There's multitudes of different film theories, which are essentially just theoretical perspectives from which you can analyze a movie, right? Or, if that makes any sense, right? So to pick a quick one out there, the 3 that I decided we would probably be starting with once we dive into learning specific film theories. I don't know what the fuck I ate, but I am just burping like crazy. It's insane. I don't even know. But either way, so forgive me if I burp in your ear. I'm getting good with the mute button. My mom has gotten on me like hardcore, like stop burping in everyone's face. So I'm going to take her advice and do my best not to do that. But anyways, yeah. So, we'll dive into specific film theories. The top 3 that we're probably looking at least starting with was formalism film theory. Just as a quick example of these different film theories, what a film theory is, right? Formalism film theory is the theory that the director is creating essentially what's the word that I'm looking for? Incredibly fantastical world, right? They're creating a world in their movie that is unrealistic. Formalism is essentially the opposite of realism in movies. Realism is a movie that is very real. We're going to learn a little bit more about that today, the difference between realism and formalism and how film theorists separate those two. But essentially, realism would be the more true to life a film is, right? Doing the least amount of taking the least amount of creative license possible with the subject matter to give you the most realistic interpretation of a particular subject. So that, what the most real you can get would be a very factual documentary. That would be realism. On the opposite side of that, you get into more avant-garde type surrealism type stuff where the whole point is to be as unrealistic as possible, but a little bit less than, a step down from the avant-garde. Surrealism would be formalism. which is think Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park is not real in any sense of the imagination, because that's a funny way to put it, but because it's got fucking dinosaurs in it, bro. I hate to tell you, but we don't got theme parks full of dinosaurs nowadays. I know, it's a fucking bummer. But uh that would be a formalist film. So formalism film theory is taking apart the ways in which a director, or filmmakers in general, the whole team of people who are engaged in making a film, create a fantastical world, a fantastical story that isn't realistic. Like, how are they creating this unrealistic world, bending the real world to create this story that is very fantastical, right? Another one would be structuralist film theory, which is very closely related to semiotics. Semiotics is the study of patterns in language. That takes the idea of patterns and the most base level of communication and transposes that specific idea onto film. So how it is essentially looking for patterns, ideas, and beliefs that are being communicated through the symbolism or the most basic building blocks of the film, right? We're going to have to get in a little more of that. Auteur theory is a much easier one to understand out of the three. Auteur theory is simply the idea that a director is the author of a film. Auteur means a French for author. So auteur theory would be that the director is the author of a film. And when you're analyzing a film through the lens of auteur theory, you are looking for specific characteristics in that film that are distinct to that director, things that that director put in the film as essentially kind of like a calling card, right? How does a director tell his stories? How does a film represent the director's view, or the director's vision for a story, right? So that would be auteur theory. And then after that, you got like feminism theory. Feminist film theory would be analyzing film through the lens of feminism, like analyzing how women have been portrayed in movies and what sort of societal effects that has. Parallel to that would be, say, queer film theory, which analyzes queer people in movies, both characters and actors, and then what sort of societal effect that has. With the either these characters, the stories they're telling, that might be queer stories or what have you. So it's analyzing film through these specific lenses, okay, is a good way to think about it. Historical film theory would be analyzing a film through its historical context. When is the film set? When was it shot? And how did those play a role in how the story is being told and the impact it has? Look at me just throwing that mute button out, man. Y'all don't even have to listen to me cough anymore. I'm nailing it. Before you can get into, so that's what film theory is, right? Okay, in a nutshell. We can give, let's just, I don't know why I didn't think to do this from the get-go. We have a computer right here. Film theory definition. We're just going to go ahead and pop it up right here. Film theory is a set of scholarly approaches within the academic discipline of film studies. It began in the 1920s, but we don't need to know how it began. But essentially, yeah, it is a set of scholarly approaches within the academic discipline of film or cinema studies, and that began in the 1920s by questioning the formal essential attributes of motion pictures. So it's just a way to essentially analyze film. I would say in layman's term. That would be my interpretation of that definition right there. So before we can get into film theory, understanding how any one particular film theorist, whether that's a Marxist film theorist or a auteur film theorist, a formalism film theorist, anybody who's attempting to analyze a film through the lens of film theory is going to analyze film, yes, through a specific lens, but they're going to analyze 8 characteristics about that film. And that is the 8 elements of film theory. The 8 characteristics, another way of saying it, is the 8 characteristics of a film that you are going to analyze as a film theorist, okay? And that's what we're going to go over today. And so, as you can see on my screen, we got this handy-dandy graphic here. I'm going to actually pop over to my full screen, get my ugly head out of there real quick, just so y'all can see the full graphic. Oh, especially since they're going to... Okay, there we go. So we're going to start up here with types of film is going to be the first characteristics of film that a film theorist looks at. Second is going to be the shots used in a film. Third is the camera angles. Fourth is the lighting. Fifth is the color. Sixth is the sound of the film. Seven is editing. And eight is mise en scène. Mise en scène. Yeah. And you know how I know how to say that? Because I spent like 20 minutes last week learning how to say that. Mise en scène is what that is, right? Okay. So we're going to go over all eight of them today. We're not going to do a deep dive, just a very quick run through of what these eight characteristics are. So you know what they are, right? If anybody just, happened to ask you randomly on the street, you're just walking down the street tomorrow and some cute girl or cute guy grabs you and says, quick, what are the eight elements of film theory? You're going to know how to do that. You're going to be able to throw them out there, ace the quiz, get the girl, whatever. So we're going to do just a very quick preliminary run through of each of these eight characteristics, give you at least enough understanding of what each one is that you're not particularly mystified by the mention of any particular one. We will be doing deep dives, so I'll be doing a 2-hour deep dive on each one of these eight characteristics, and we'll be looking at them we'll be looking at what all they entail, what specific things a film theorist would look for when looking into these things. And then we're going to obviously be coming with some examples and then showing what exactly they mean, right? Like what is a director attempting to convey when he uses an over the shoulder shot or a close up, right? Because those things, that's what they mean when they say, well, we're going to analyze the shots in a film. We're going to analyze what types of shots you're using and what kind of impact that has on the film. Okay. So we're going to do a deep dive into each one of these eight. 2-hour deep dive, a 2-hour stream for each one individually. That'll be a lot of fun. I got a lot of videos I'm already saving up for those, but those will be starting next month. This month, I'm just going to give you a cursory glance on them. I got a few different articles pulled up here. What is this? Get out my face. Okay, so we're going to just go through a few different articles, run through each one, and then at the end of the stream, we have this video that we didn't get to last week. Learn film analysis in 20 films. This is by a pretty decent channel called The Media Insider. I've been watching a lot of their videos lately. There's things I disagree with this guy on, things I agree with him on. All around, though, his videos are very easy to understand, and they are covering the subject matter that we are covering. And he does seem to know what he's talking about, right? I believe he's the Media Insider, the guy who runs this particular channel on YouTube, is an actual film studies teacher. So he knows what he's talking about. So we're going to throw up that particular video because that looked like an enjoyable video. It's a 20-minute video. And then, the stream is probably going to end up being a bit of a shorter stream because then I need to go pack for my trip tomorrow. So we're going to cover all that. And then once we're done, I'm going to let you guys go for your Easter weekend and see you next Tuesday is when I'll be back in. I think I get back into town Tuesday, I think at 5. So I might get in town quick enough that I can hop on a stream and do a Terrifying Tuesday, which I do want to do that because next Tuesday is a fucking awesome stream I have set up. I put a lot of work into it. I don't want to miss that stream. If I do end up missing it, then we'll just move it to the next week. It is what it is. But I am going to try to come back here and put down another Terrifying Tuesday video. Monday, I'll be in Oklahoma. But so anyways, let's go ahead and dive into it now. You got my whole, 20-minute long explanation and intro. All right. I've talked enough about random shit. So let's go ahead and dive into our topic matter. Because I'm excited about this, right? I don't know if you guys are. So let's go ahead and hit each one of these individually. And with each one, I'll run through a couple different articles to give you a few different explanations and a few different sources of information on each. So first element of film theory is going to be type of film. So there are 3 main types of film. There is realism, classicalism, and formalism. Okay, see, I told you, we're already getting into that realism and formalism that I was telling you about earlier. We have an article based on rejecting realism and embracing formalism. Oh, okay. So once you have the definitions down, circle back for some fun. Okay, well, maybe we'll jump into that article. That might be interesting. So, but let's go into each different type, right? So realism. This type of film focuses on the real. Oh, well, I would have never guessed. Movies and TV take us to many different places, but to fall into this category, the piece has to be dedicated to showing the unfiltered world. Some examples of this would be Fish Tank, The Bicycle Thief, The Deer Hunter, Kids. Right? So I don't know if any of you have seen any of those. I don't think I've seen The Bicycle Thief or Fish Tank. I don't know if they mean the Deer Hunter as in Robert De Niro's Deer Hunter. That's really hilarious that they're putting that up there in realism. For those who haven't seen that, I forget. I think it was the '80s was when that came out. That was a Vietnam flick. It's a good movie. I would definitely check it out. But being a young kid growing up in Wyoming, got to tell a funny story about the deer hunter. Being a kid growing up in Wyoming, everybody hunts in Wyoming. Pretty much almost everybody. You grow up hunting. It's something you do with your dads, something you do with your moms. I mean, people's moms hunt. My mom hunted. You know, men, women, it don't really matter. Everybody hunts in Wyoming, right? Deer hunting, especially, is a big thing up there. We don't hunt a lot of whitetail, not a lot of whitetail in Wyoming. It's mostly mule deer that we hunt, at least in my section of Wyoming. I think when you get to the northwestern corner up there by Jackson Hole, you get a lot more whitetail. But where I am, down in the southeastern corner, it's mostly mule deer and antelope. Anyways, I remember getting a copy of The Deer Hunter when I was in high school because I collected Robert De Niro movies. I know I'm such a fucking nerd. I was a high schooler that thought the coolest thing in the world was to have a movie collection. And I still think that, by the way. I never grew out of that. But The Deer Hunter, I got that film. I got the DVD for it and opened it, and on the cover is a picture of an elk. And I was like, oh, that's odd. The movie's called The Deer Hunter and it has a picture of an elk on it. Like, okay, all right, whatever, whatever. And so, I go to put the film in and they show them hunting a deer, right? Robert De Niro and his friends hunting a deer, and the deer that they shoot is an elk. Well, it's a red stag, right? Which I guess if I did find out later that if you are in, I think it's Australia, they do call it a red deer in Australia, but it's a fucking stag. It's a red stag. It's an elk, is what it is. And so as far as I'm aware, we don't have red stag in America. We have elk, we have Roosevelt elk, and I think there's Thole elk. And there's a third kind of elk, New Mexico elk, I think it's called, New Mexican elk, Roosevelt elk, and Thole elk, I think are the three types of elk in North America. We don't have red stag, and at least not in the wild. And I think this movie takes place in Pennsylvania, and it shows them shooting an elk. It's called The Deer Hunter. So, anyways, I don't know how high the Deer Hunter scores on realism for that one. I'm going to take a couple points off. Kids was a good movie, though. Kids was a good movie. Again, whether or not that is real, I'll let you decide. I would say that for a real concrete example of as real as realism can get, you need to think documentaries. That is the best representation of realism that you can get because there's very little next to no cinematic uh, creativity going into documentaries in the sense of like putting elaborate set designs or script writing that has to follow a particular plot, things like that. The whole point of a documentary is to get information out there to the public. And yet they do certainly do it in a creative manner, in a way that's easy to ingest, but specifically it's for the sake of uh relaying information, right? So characteristics of realism films. They're going to have non-professional actors with exceptions. I was going to say, you're talking non-professional actors, then you throw the Deer Hunter up there, or kids. Kids had a lot of pros in it too. No special effects, on location sets and props. That's actually an important one. They do make a point of that. Shooting on location falls into the category of realism. Minimal editing, natural lighting, and documentary style. Okay, are the main characteristics of realism film. Realism strives to show the real world for what it is. It gets down and dirty. The ability to shoot and create movies using phones and digital cameras has brought back a recent surge in realism film. Some recent movements in realism are mumblecore films. I don't know what that is. We got to click on that. Mumblecore. That sounds like a form of rap. We'll get to that in a minute. And modern realism. Films like The Florida Project. I've heard good things about that. I haven't watched it yet. I heard that it's so sad, though. So the Florida Project, though, Fruitville Station, and Once strive to show their characteristics dealing with real issues of the day-to-day life. I do want to see that Florida Project. I heard that was a really good movie. And 20 great mumblecore movies every indie lover should see. Okay, well, we got to look into this. What is mumblecore though? Mumblecore as a genre is not particularly difficult to define. Primarily, you have a small, intimate cast of characters, low budget production, and a film that relies heavily on dialogue to tell the story without the use of gimmicky plot devices or a great deal of action. Typically, the casts are not professional actors or actors with a small amount of experience. You know, so what I'm thinking here is maybe like 12 Angry Men. Although, granted, 12 Angry Men was about 12 angry men in a room, right? It was very dialogue driven. Glenn Glary, Glenn Ross was also very dialogue driven movie. It essentially surrounds just a small group of men in a room. And to continue with the Al Pacino references, there's a very obscure movie that he directed and acted in called Chinese Coffee. That was just him and another actor. For most of the movie, it's just him and another actor in one room together having a conversation. So it sounds like that's what mumblecore is, but a little more on the realism side. So funny, haha, Uncle Kent 2. I'm just looking to see if I know any of these. Hump Day, Drinking Buddies, Cyrus. Look, my computer isn't loading the pictures, which is a bummer. Passenger Side. Okay. Oh, there's pay. I was gonna say I could have sworn they promised me 22. Daddy Longlegs, aka Go Get Some Rosemary. Bellflower, Jeff Who Lives at Home, Lonesome Jim, The Puffy Chair, Your Sister's Sister, Appropriate Behavior. I so far have not heard of any of these. Obvious Child, Wendy and Lucy, Safety Not Guaranteed, Half Nelson, Before Sunset, Me and You and Everyone We Know, and Francis Ha. Okay, don't know a single one of those, but that's what mumblecore is. Now you know. That is not a category of type of movie, film theory, but it is a subcategory of realism. Okay, second category is classical film. So this falls between the two extremes of realism and formalism. Classical film still wants to emphasize authentic moments between real people, but with the manipulation of its creative production elements. Movies like Lone Survivor, Citizen Kane, The Godfather, Trainwreck, and Spotlight. Okay, so this is centered around real people, but with the manipulation of creative production elements. Again, if you're talking about like you throw Lone Survivor in there, I think at this point, if any of you follow along with any YouTube military channels, which I got a couple that I watch, a couple like YouTube Navy SEAL guys that I watch. Lone Survivor nowadays we know is pretty much entirely bullshit, entirely made up, which is a bummer because it's one of my favorite war movies, man. It's a really good war flick, but nothing that they said happened in the movie actually happened in real life. Very, very little did. It's not close to the real story whatsoever. And I think Marcus Luttrell, the man that Lone Survivor is centered around, he even came out recently and said that the Navy SEALs needed to get ahead of this massive disaster, which was a very big tragedy for the SEALs. I think it was 16 SEALs died on Operation Red Wings, and they needed to get ahead of it. So they immediately contacted Marcus Luttrell. They already had the book in writing, like they were already in the process of writing it. They had him sign documents claiming that he wrote it, and then he would get the credit. And then, but to keep like a non-disclosure agreement that you would keep your mouth shut for a certain amount of years until it all blew over. And then once it blew over, he came out and said, yeah, I never wrote the book. I never told the story. The Navy came to me and they already had the book written. And they wrote it how they wanted to write it, so people would see the incident in a different light that painted the Navy SEALs like super badasses, which they are. But that particular day, the Navy SEALs, they had a pretty rough go of it, So we'll just keep it there. But yeah, interesting though. So yeah, movies, moments between real people, but with the manipulation of its creative production elements. Some characteristics of classical films includes professional actors, minimal or no special effects, on location or in studio, editing used for time lapse, lighting and sound used to create mood. Okay, so you can kind of cross-reference that with realism, non-professional actors versus professional actors, no special effects versus minimal special effects, on location versus on location and or in studio, minimal editing versus editing for time-lapse purposes, and natural lighting versus lighting and sound used to create a specific mood. Most drama movies you watch fall into the classical category. Remember, this is classical in form, not to be confused with the kinds you watch on TCM, but lots of those classical movies are classical too. I guess that is an important point to make there. They don't mean movies made in the 1950s when they say classical. They mean a very specific way. If you haven't figured it out, when film theorists are talking about types of film, they're talking about the way in which the film was made, not the genre of the film, which we'll get into here in a moment. Not the genre of the film, or no other type of movie. No, they're talking specifically about how the movie was shot, not the anything else about it. Right? Okay. So, continuing, formalism is our third and final category of film. Third type of film. Formalism focuses on the director bringing the audience an altered reality that they've created. It's pretty much every Guillermo del Toro movie, and every superhero movie, and every Star Wars. Most modern movies. Film theory and Disney are compatible. Who knew? I don't know entirely what they mean by that. But characteristics of formalism films, they include professional actors versus classical, that also has professional actors, versus realism, which has no professional actors, but very rare exceptions, relies heavily on special effects versus classical that has minimal special effects, and realism, which has no special effects. They have editing speeds up or slows down time versus editing for time lapses, which would be your classical, and minimal editing, if any at all, which would be your realism. Lighting and sound create exaggerations versus lighting and sound used to set a mood in classical movies, and or using exclusively natural light and natural sound for realism movies. And then these movies, of course, are meant to break the illusion of reality. Lucky for us, there's no actual Thanos showing up to wipe out the Earth's population, but formalism seeks to show us a completely artificial world. A lot of times, these movies are why we go to the theater. They're also responsible for the rise in animation for adults. This is how you apply film theory to Rick and Morty. Ha! That would be fun. So we're going to go over that again. Here's another just specific basic rundown of those three types of film theory. This is a different website, getting information from three different sources. Whenever I can on the stream, I prefer to do that. Damn. I thought I hit that mute button, but I sure didn't. That was a nasty one, too. That burnt my throat. My hand shot out and overshot that mute button. So there's a burp for you, Mom. Sorry. She's definitely going to call me out for that burp. Okay. Film type. Three types of film type. Can you guess what they are? Realism, showing an unfiltered and realistic world, uses natural lighting and often non-professional actors with minimal editing and no special effects. So we've already went over that. Classical emphasizes authentic moments while using creative production elements, uses professional lighting and actors, but with little to no special effects and editing, only for when time is passing. And then formalism, showing an altered reality created by the director, uses professional actors, special effects, creative lighting, and sound effects. So they're giving us the same rundown. This is NFI EDU, giving us the same rundown as No Film School. We're going to dive to another one, careersinfilm.com. And this was an interesting one that I wanted to bring up. This is types of film. And then next to that, in parentheses, they have film genres. I believe I just got done telling you that genre is not the same as type of film, but I don't know. Let's see what Careers in Film says. Here is a fascinating aspect of film theory. Just the type of film can help to inform the meaning of it. Without knowing anything else about a movie, if told that it's a comedy, horror, western, or war epic, we immediately formulate ideas about what that particular narrative is about. That's why some people immediately shut down the idea of watching a movie when told only its genre. That's because over the 100,000 plus years of cinema, genres have been built upon certain precepts. So when a new film within that genre stays well within the already established rules for it, that says something about it, as does when a film makes a choice to step out of those conventions. This scene offers a true meta moment when a character in a horror film is explaining the rules of the horror genre to others. That's Scream. We've all seen that. Okay, so that's what they have to say about types of film. They broke it right down into genres. And so who's right here, right? I wanted to give you this source because I read that and I was like, well, that is completely against everything else that I've read, right? And it is. You look it up. You can go look it up yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. Go look it up on Google. And yeah, types of film specifically means those three types we talked about. It does not mean film genre. I have no idea what careersinfilm.com is talking about here. But they need to consider getting a better editors, because they are definitely not doing a good job putting out the information there. Yeah. So again, and that's under the elements of film heading, you guys. So I'm not pretending like they're making shit up. That's under the exact same elements of film, and there it is, types of film, and they call it film genre. Don't pay attention to that. They're wrong. Anybody that tells you that a type of film in regards to film genre, in regards to film theory, is the film genre, is wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. And that includes careersinfilm.com, which sounds like a website that should know what they're talking about. But at least when it comes to that topic, they don't. We're still going to reference other things they say because I've ran through this article and the other aspects of film that they bring up. They seem to be doing a halfway decent job. Again, right here, they combine camera angles and shots together to talk about them both, which is fine. It's a different way to look at it because camera angles and shots, as we're about to find out, are very difficult to separate from one another. But since we already talked about it, the next category we're going to go into, the next element of film, is film shots. Okay, angles is the third category of film, but we'll get into that here in a minute. Either way, let's just run down that first one again. The first category is film type. There's three different types of film: realism, classical, and formalism. Three film types, all right? So, film shots, what do we have to say about that? So, film shots, or a shot, is essentially how you frame a picture, how you frame a particular scene using your cameras, right? So, angles is closely related, but yeah, a film scene, they don't give us a actual general rundown here. I believe the other website does, but these are basically just types of shots here. Let's run over there and they'll give us camera shots. Film theorists analyze how different camera shots convey messages and moods. And oh, that only just gives us a shot too. Okay, so here, let me just get the actual definition for you guys. Because it is important to understand the difference between a shot and a angle, because they are two separate things. So a shot is a series of frames that runs for an interrupted period of time. Fill shots are an essential aspect of a movie where angles, transitions, and cuts are used to further express emotions, ideas, and movements. So a shot is a series of frames that runs for an interrupted period of time. Okay, that's important to know. We'll come back to that when we get to angles so you can compare the two so you don't get them mixed up. But there's various different kinds of shots. Here's some examples. There's a single shot, which is a single character in frame. Two shot, which is two characters in frame. Guess what three shot is? An over-the-shoulder shot, if you can see here, is over the shoulder of one character to focus on another. Point of view shot is a shot from the point of view of another character, or in this case, it looks like two characters pointing a gun at, I believe that's Mad Max. Handful of different types of shots: extreme close-ups, medium shots, full shots, long shots, also known as wide shots, extreme long shots, or extreme wide shots, the same thing, deep focus shots, the American shot, over-the-shoulder shot, and the POV shot. So, we dissect every scene as a combination of shots. Different combos create different moods and different directional intentions. And I believe these guys give us pretty much the exact same rundown of shots over here. Shot composition. Let's see, is this video super long? Let's see, what are we at time-wise? Yeah, we're doing pretty good. Yeah, let's go ahead, watch a little bit of this, see what happens. Okay.
Because of its unique blend of images and audio, film is a complex storytelling medium, with colors, lighting, score, editing.
I'm going to pause, send you over to the main screen. It's nice and wide. Then if I need to itch my butt or pick my nose. You can't see me.
Shot framing, acting, dialogue, and many other elements to pay attention to, it can be difficult to figure out what exactly a film means, what it is saying, why it makes us feel a certain way. Just like in any form of communication, a director has a variety of tools at his or her disposal when communicating ideas through film. Each of these tools can be used to carefully manipulate a film to achieve the director's goals, to communicate through images and audio exactly what they want to say. Gaining an understanding of these tools, both how they work individually and how they work in tandem with other tools, can make it easier to extract meaning from a movie. Think of these tools like rhetorical techniques in literature. For instance, a poet may string together a series of S's in sequence to emphasize sinister undercurrents, or Shakespeare might use a blazon to mock literary tropes. In a similar way, Alfred Hitchcock may use a classic technique, the iris, to make viewers feel like they're spying on a character, or Steven Spielberg might choose a specific camera angle for a shot that communicates a character's terror when faced with a dinosaur. These sort of techniques allow a director to make a statement, to create a specific impact. By breaking down these techniques, we can begin to understand what that impact is. Today we'll be looking at shot composition, one of the essential tools in a director's repertoire. I've said this already, but I really need to emphasize that when analyzing film, we don't just look at all of the techniques a director uses in isolation. We take all of the pieces, all of the tools, and examine how they work together to achieve a particular effect. However, in order to do this, we need to understand those individual pieces so that we're not overwhelmed with visual and auditory information. Even though we will be focusing on shot composition for this video, keep in mind that it can influence and be influenced by the other techniques a director may choose to implement. With that in mind, let's narrow our focus to shot composition. Composition is one of the building blocks.
This is a surprisingly educational video. I wasn't going to watch any particular videos on any specific one of these 8 elements, but I'm glad we chose to watch this one, because this is good so far.
Blocks of film. It refers to the arrangement of characters and objects within the frame, the relative positions, sizes, and prominence of entities within the shot. A director can manipulate the composition of a shot in order to create an impact, to influence the viewer's perception of what is on screen. It can inform us of relationships between characters, highlight specific character traits, and generate an emotional response from viewers. Not only is shot composition an effective tool for conveying a message to the viewer, it's also essential for just making a film look good. There's a reason composition is a basic technique taught in art classes. In much the same way that a painter composes his piece to be visually appealing and interesting, a director composes his shots to maintain his viewer's attention. While a director may opt for busy composition in some instances to get a point across, a muddled mess of objects and characters is confusing and visually unappealing. A film is a string of pictures, and by understanding what is happening within those pictures, we can begin to understand film as a whole. Take this shot from Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan. Pause the video before I analyze it to try to pick things out for yourself. Your interpretation may be different from mine, and that's absolutely okay. We're just trying to get used to examining a shot and deriving meaning from it. Notice the gun.
Alright, let's do this. Let's play his little fucking game. We'll play your game, sir. So, what do you notice about this particular shot? I think this would be considered a wide shot, including multiple characters in there. It's showing them relaxed, midday. So the idea would be there's no intensity conveyed through it, right? Like, especially for Saving Private Ryan, that's a really intense movie. It's a war movie. We're clearly conveying that we're at a moment here where nothing crazy is expected to happen. There could be a potential for this guy right here. See how he's separated from the group? That might mean something as far as the shot's concerned. This guy might be over here saying something that the rest of the group disagrees with, right? The visual interpretation, meaning the visual implication could be that he's outside the group. He's not one of them. So that could be a distinct possibility. Yeah, that's all I got so far. I mean, we know in general we're looking at, I don't know if this would be included in shot, but yeah, that would be more of a costume thing, so never mind. I won't comment on that. But yeah, that's what I got so far. So let's go ahead and see what this guy has to say.
forming a barrier between the standing soldier and the three sitting on the steps. It creates a visual divide, one that may reflect events happening within the narrative. Why would Spielberg choose to use guns specifically? Yeah, they're soldiers, so it makes sense within the film's context, but perhaps Spielberg had more in mind when composing this shot. Perhaps you wanted to make a point about how war tears individuals apart or something like that. Why is one soldier standing and the other three sitting down? Does it further enhance the divide between them? Does it serve some larger role within the context of the film? These sort of questions help us to examine composition, to derive meaning from it, and to interpret the film. The Spielberg example is pretty straightforward to analyze. I chose that particular shot because the compositional decisions are pretty easy to pick out. Because of this, it's somewhat simple to analyze the composition of that shot. I may have stretched a bit at times, but it's still pretty clear what Spielberg is getting at. There are instances,
I mean, he said pretty much what I said, right? So I feel like I nailed that one, right? What do you think? Maybe I fucked that up.
however, in which compositional decisions are more subtle. Sometimes it can be more difficult to pick out what a director is getting at with his shots. It's also important to keep in mind that some compositional elements may not even be deliberate decisions. Authorial intent is a difficult question, and there's a never-ending debate on whether it even matters.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to stop the video right there. More so because we kind of got a good idea. Exit full screen. Oh, F. Oh, balls. Okay. Oof. Thank you, man. I thought my thing here was going to freeze. I got videos rendering in the background, OBS running, about 4 or 5 different web pages, all kinds of stuff going on. So, but it didn't freeze. We're good. So I just wanted to play that for you so you can get an understanding of what a shot specifically is, especially once we dive into this next category, camera angles. They don't give us too much more on that second one, but here, let's check out this third one. This third source that I have, camera angles and shots. So it kind of combines the two. But let's see what they have to say over at Careers in Film. With every single film comes the decision of how to shoot every single shot in it. And while many films rely heavily on some of the more standard eye-level long and medium shots, the sky's the limit on the type of shots and angles available to them. Take, for example, the film Citizen Kane. Ooh, caught that burp. For anyone interested in learning how camera angles and shots can inform a story, this particular movie is a virtual masterclass. I do think that's the reason why so many people bring up Citizen Kane, because it is supposedly amazing, and as far as what angles and shots it uses, were sort of ahead of its time, I guess, from what I hear. Anyway, specifically, watch the sequence where Kane's parents are selling him away. A choice was made to film that scene in deep focus, which allows the audience to watch young Charles in the background playing in the snow as his parents argue about whether or not they should keep him. Ooh, that's rough. Deep focus is a defining feature of Citizen Kane. In this particular scene, it showcases the joy and youthfulness of Charles Foster Kane as others decide his fate. This pivotal moment is then referenced upon Kane's deathbed when he whispers Rosebud, the name of the sled he had as a boy with which he was playing in that scene. Oh. I don't think I picked up on that when I watched it. It's been a long time since I've seen Citizen Kane, right? Not the most exciting movie in the world, but as far as film theory goes, it's like obviously considered one of the best. You've heard about it already. You know, everybody's heard about that. So anyways, yeah, that's a rundown of shots. They kind of combine cameras, angles, and shots because the two do work very close together. Oh, let's go back to... Hi again. There you are. Okay, so camera angles and shots work pretty closely together to create, emotion, to inform us about the characters, to create a composition where we can, visually and in some cases even subconsciously get implicit information from about the film and about the characters and about what's going on inside the film. So their explanation is camera angles and shots. They kind of more explain to us why it's important. On that note, let's go ahead and dive into angles now. So we have a good idea. Hopefully you have a good idea of what a shot is. Again, the actual definition, a series of frames that runs for an interrupted period of time. So that's one individual shot would be an uninterrupted series of frames, or an uninterrupted, well, that's essentially a shot, right? The camera uninterrupted. And a shot can have multiple angles, though, right? An angle is different than a shot. So there are 4 main types of angles. There's eye level, high angle, low angle, and oblique angle. So, eye level angle shots. Definition: the camera is positioned at the same height as the subject eyes, creating a horizontal line parallel to the ground. The effect: an eye level shot feels neutral, natural, and realistic. They allow the viewer to connect with the character on equal footing. Don't get dirty, cutie pie. Don't get dirty. Where's your mind at? The angle can be oh, that's high angle. Sorry. Yeah. So they allow the viewer to connect with the character on an equal footing without imposing superiority or inferiority. High angle shots. The camera is positioned above the subject looking down. The angle can be subtle or extreme. The effects of a high angle shot can make subjects appear vulnerable, small, weak, or insignificant. They can also provide a broader overview of the scene. And so, can you guess what a low angle shot is? A low angle shot is the camera is positioned below the subject looking up. High angle camera is above looking down. Eye level, low angle. Like high angles, the degree of tilt can range from subtle to dramatic. The effect of low angles can make subjects appear powerful, dominant, imposing, or heroic. They can also exaggerate height and distort perspective for a dramatic effect. Interesting. So if you're shooting high down, makes a subject appear small, weak, insignificant. Low angle makes them feel big, tall, powerful. The oblique angle, also called the Dutch angle. That does sound like something dirty, doesn't it? The Dutch angle. Almost as bad as body shots and belly button shots. The definition of an oblique angle: the camera is deliberately tilted to one side, resulting in a frame where the horizontal line is not level. The effect: oblique angles create a sense of disorientation, unease, tension, or psychological imbalance. They suggest something is off or unusual in the world of film. So, we should look up an example of a Dutch angle. Oblique angle example. Okay, there you go. So oblique angle, here's Harry Potter. Oh, okay, there we go. That would be an oblique angle, I suppose. Okay. Camera is deliberately tilted to one side, resulting in a frame where the horizontal line is not level. Okay. Looks like that's probably a good one right there. I mean, everything in that little scene is tilted. That's Inception right there. That scene is pretty crazy. I believe the camera is even rotating in that scene. But, anyways, important note: the effect of these angles can be highly contextual and depend on other factors like lighting, composition, and the film's overall tone. These angles are also used to elicit emotions from the viewer. When you're making your shot lists and storyboard, think about how you can manipulate the viewer into emotions based on how you shoot the scene. So, let me get rid of these pages here. So that is an angle, right? Your shot is the actual, that uninterrupted moments where you're following a character or focused on a character or focused on some action in the screen. The angle would refer to the camera angle through which you're shooting. Eye level, high, low, and then oblique would be tilted. Oop, like that, right? Okay. Or Dutch angle. And camera angles. Film theorists also examine the way camera angles make viewers feel. Filmmakers can manipulate the viewer's emotions based on the camera angles they choose. The four angles are high level angle, high angle, low angle, and oblique angle. Not a lot of information there, but fine. And we already went over what they had to say about angles. So that's, important to just note the difference between a shot and an angle. So we got three main elements of film. The type of film could be realism, classical, or formalism. We have shots, which there's an untold number of shots. I actually already have the note cards and the web pages chosen for my deep dive into shots. And there's an untold number of shots, right? The different kinds of shots that exist, they just go on and on and on. There's so many of them that in a 2-hour stream, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to cover all those shots. Instead, I'm just covering like the sheer basics, the basic 10 that they kind of noted up here, right? These basic ones: deep focus, extreme close up, full shot, medium shot, American shot, over the shoulder, and POV shot, and all of those, right? Angles refer to the camera angle, and that could be a eye level, high angle, low angle, or an oblique angle, also called a Dutch angle. So those are our first three elements that film theorists look at, and how they inform the viewer on how they're supposed to feel about what's happening in the film at that current point in time. So let's move on to number 4. That is going to be lighting. And there are also 4 main kinds of lighting. There is high key lighting. That's an emphasis, brightness, even illumination, and minimizing shadows is high key lighting. Technique uses a strong fill light to reduce contrast, along with a key light and often a backlight. You don't need to know what all of those lights are. Like I said, we will do a deep dive into lighting for film. I know that sounds super duper boring to all of you who aren't interested in film, but let's be real. If there's somebody who is watching this that wasn't interested in film, they're probably not watching at this point in the video anymore anyways. So those of you who are watching up to this point, you're probably a film fanatic like myself, and you do probably find this interesting. So you have high key lighting, which emphasizes brightness, even illumination, minimizing shadows. The effect of it is to create an optimistic, upbeat, and youthful feel. Shadows are minimal and details are clearly visible, often used in comedies, sitcoms, and commercials. Low key lighting. Emphasis on deep shadows, high contrast, and selective illumination. The technique employs a hard key light with little or no fill light, leaving large areas of the image in darkness. The effect is to create a sense of drama, mystery, suspense, and even danger, often used in thrillers, film noir, and horror genres. Film noir and horror genres. I'm still speaking French. Yesterday we had French words in there. One of them was spelled the same as noir, but it was pronounced noir. So I'm still speaking French. Well, I don't know what this is. I don't think that's French. Chiaroscuro lighting. I'm going to have to figure out how to pronounce that word. Chiaroscuro lighting? I even forgot. Chiaroscuro. Scuro pronunciation. Okay, yeah. I did a stream filled with words I couldn't say, and it was embarrassing. So now I make it a point to learn these things.
Chiaroscuro.
Chiaroscuro. Okay. Chiaroscuro lighting. Emphasis of the chiaroscuro lighting is high contrast lighting with dramatic interplay between light and shadow. The term comes from Italian, meaning light dark. Okay. So technique uses strong directional light sources to sculpt the subject, creating sharp contrasts and deep shadows. The effect creates a sense of depth, volume, mystery, and can be used to highlight specific emotions or themes. Chiaroscuro lighting was prevalent in Renaissance painting and heavily influenced film noir cinematography. So how does that compare to high key is brightness, even illumination, and lack of shadows. Low key is deep shadows, high contrast, and selective illumination. Chiaroscuro lighting is also high contrast lighting, emphasis on dramatic interplay between light and shadow. So seems like kind of like it's different than the two, but it's more closely related to low key lighting. Then we have silhouette black lighting. Emphasis creates a stark outline of the subject with the background brightly exposed. Technique achieved by placing a powerful black light behind the subject with no key or fill lights in the front. The effect isolates the subject, creating a sense of mystery, anonymity, or drama. The silhouette can be used to emphasize the subject's form or conceal their identity. Each version of lighting sets a mood. Think about the genre of movies you love. Comedy and noir are lit with different ways to get different moods. The better you get at making movies, the more you can blend these styles for fresh and unique ways to draw an audience, like in Game Night. I haven't seen that movie. So there's lighting in a nutshell. I mean, obviously, that was pretty self-explanatory what lighting is. The 4 main kinds of lighting, I'm assuming that there's probably different kinds of lighting. They don't all just fall into these, but high key lighting, think bright. Low key lighting, think dark shadows. Chiaroscuro lighting, think high contrast between shadows and light. And silhouette black lighting, think of stark outlining of the subject with bright background. Okay. Let's see what they have to say about lighting over here at nfi.edu. A film's lighting can also create mood. Comedy typically uses high key lighting to set a light-hearted mood. The low key lighting of film noir sets a much darker, more intense mood. Blending lighting styles can create new moods. Film theorists recognize the following lighting types: high key lighting, low key lighting, chiaroscuro lighting, and silent silhouette backlighting. And what do they have to say over at Careers in Film? Color editing, they're all just all over the place with their article. Okay, lighting. Lighting in film is never just as simple as making sure you can see the actors and their surroundings through the camera. Rather, lighting can help in setting the mood of individual scenes as well as the film as a whole. I know, don't think I haven't noticed that a lot of what we're saying is repetitive. I don't think that's entirely a bad thing. You might get tired of it, but if you're watching this for the purpose of learning, it is repetition is a big deal. Repetition is key to learning new information. I also, again, the whole point is to just give you three different sources and what they're saying. So, depending on the intention behind it, lighting can also subtly inform the character. Perhaps a choice is made to bathe a character in the soft glow to underscore their goodness or to forego the fill light so that the key presents them in a harsher contrast, thus highlighting the darker side of their nature. Filmed in low lighting common to film noir, double indemnity, I don't know how to say that word, and that's English, jeez, underlines the dark secrets and doings of its two anti-heroes, Phyllis and Walter. In fact, some entire genres of film are defined by their use of lighting, such as film noir. Film noir, which utilizes low-key lighting, generally is defined by its permeating shadows that heighten the dark, mysterious, and sometimes dangerous mood of its narratives. Yeah, I think film noir, think crime noir, detective noir. They're always very kind of dark, gritty films, regardless if it's like detective orientated, crime orientated, it's a spooky one, mystery one, whatever. So that's lighting. Four different types of lighting: high key, low key, chiaroscuro. I'm doing a really good job at saying that word, and I just learned it. And silhouette or black lighting. All right. Four different types of lighting, and that's our fourth element of film. And we're going to move on to our fifth element, which is color. So it's interesting to see color being brought up in terms of film. I mean, it's not, I probably should have guessed that, but anybody who's been in any kind of basic high school level art class is at least somewhat aware of color theory, right? The very difference between warm colors, cold colors, complementary colors, blues and oranges, golds and purples, things like that. I'm not entirely sure about triadic or split complementary, slightly different. I guess that's a little bit above my pay grade. But what we are focusing on in film theory, there are two main kinds of colors that you want to identify: saturated, which convey happiness, fantasies, romance, or some idyllic scenery. Think about the frames in Willy Wonka. The factory is seen as a wonderland where dreams come alive. So saturated colors means more or less vivid colors is another way to say that, right? Deep, vivid, bright, even neon colors could be considered like saturated, but it means a lot of color is what saturated means. Like it means to be overly filled with something, essentially. So when you're talking about different types of colors, saturated colors would be thick, bright, heavy colors. Desaturated colors conveys the past, struggle, depression, or some other dystopia scenery. Compare Willy Wonka to The Road. It looks like a place no one wants to be. So those are two really good examples. Willy Wonka, if you haven't seen it, any of the Willy Wonkas, they just made a new one. They made the remake, and then they had the original, and all three of them, there's a whole lot of color in those movies. The movie itself is saturated with saturated color. The colors are very bright. They're very boom in your face. Sometimes even neon. Even when, like in the third Willy Wonka, where they're showing a much more realistic view of the world, right? It's not all just set in his factory. They're showing, like, I forget where it was set, but it's showing the town. The colors are still very bright. Compare that to not any, but most horror movies. Me and my cutie pie just watched Hereditary a few nights ago. We also just got done watching Haunting of Hill House, amazing TV show. Both of those films were very dark, muted, not particularly bright colors. The colors in them were very drab, very unvivid, really. They're the opposite of Willy Wonka, right? Because it wants to create, and for most of the Hill House movies and in Hereditary, it wants to create a dark, mysterious, sinister, scary, or even sad and depressing sort of mood. So that's how color can inform that. They don't have much else to say about color in this source. Film theorists recognize the impact of two main kinds of color in film: saturated, which is vivid color used for fantasy romance and conveying happiness; desaturated, which is muted colors used for dystopian films and conveying depression and struggle. Let's see what they have to say about it over at Careers in Film. I seen color was up here. Here it is. Some in the entertainment world mourn the demise of black and white photography in favor of color filmmaking. However, the use of color sense has become yet another element that contributes to film theory. Not only are camera angles and shots considered in the process of making a movie, but so too the images and objects that they will be picking up. Hence the necessity of choosing a color palette that reflects the mood and themes of the film. Edward Scissorhands is an excellent example of how color can inform story. This sequence of events in Edward Scissorhands demonstrates the deliberate choices made by Tim Burton, as well as his production design and costuming team, to exaggerate how out of place Edward truly is. The audience is introduced to Edward in a fairly monochromatic world. We can dive back to this, jump back to this. Monochromatic means that you are, what does that say? Intensity of colors within a specific hue. So monochromatic color scale would be a color scale which is just different hues of essentially the same color. So the audience is introduced to Edward in a fairly monochromatic world, both in terms of his surroundings and his own costuming and makeup. But when he comes to live with the Boggs, he is suddenly thrust into a pastel suburban wonderland, which emphasizes the differences between him and everyone else. So that's how, color can, this is another reason why I threw up this third source, because that's a very interesting concept to look at. That's another great example of how color can heavily influence how you're seeing a specific scene, right? So that color gives us our first 5 elements of film, right? First is type, 3 different types of type: realism, classical, formalism. Then we had shots, whole giant list of different kinds of shot. Your most common ones are close-ups, wides, medium shots, single shots, American shots, double shots, POV shots, over the shoulder, tons of them though, angles, and there was 4 main angles that they center around. That was, I'm almost forgetting them, eye level, and was it a high angle, right? Yep, high level, high angle, low angle, and oblique or Dutch angle. Okay, and then we had lighting. Again, there was 4 main types of lighting. That was high key lighting, low key lighting. Let's remember if I can, how to say it. I want to say charcuterie. I know that's not it. That's food. Chiaroscuro lighting. Chiaroscuro lighting, and then silhouette or black lighting are the 4 main types of lighting they focus on. And then color, there's 2 types of color that they recognize: saturated colors and desaturated. Okay? Basic rundown. Remember, that's kind of all we're trying to accomplish with this particular stream. So we'll move on to our 6th element of film, which is sound. And there are, again, 2 main types of sound. There is diegetic sound, sound whose source is visible on the screen or whose sound is implied to be present by the action of the film, also characterized by off-screen or on-screen. So some examples would be the voices of the characters, the sound made by props, music coming from instruments in the film. The easiest way to understand diegetic sound is to think about what the characters on screen can hear. So anything that is happening because of the action on screen, whether it's on screen or off screen, as long as it's happening within the bounds of the story, like it's something the character should be able to hear, is an example of diegetic sound. Then there's non-diegetic sounds. Sounds whose source is not visible on screen nor has been applied by the action of the film. Basically any sound that comes from outside the story. So some examples would be a narrator's commentary or a narrator's voice. Sound effects added for dramatic effect. Mood music. So any kind of music or soundtrack to the film. Again, these are things the audience hears that the characters cannot. And that's the main difference between diegetic and non-diegetic sound. Diegetic sounds, the characters in the story would hear them. Non-diegetic sounds are sounds only you as the audience can hear. Pretty simple, pretty easy, right? The sound and color Pretty easy breakdown. Let's continue at nfi.edu. Sound is another key element that film theorists analyze. There are two key types of film sound. Two key types of film sound. Diegetic, the sounds characters could hear because their source is on screen or off screen and a part of the film's action. This includes character voices and the sounds of props and instruments that would be in the film. Non diegetic sounds, the sounds characters do not hear because they occur outside the narrative. This includes narration and a film score. So, and also think of like the Three Stooges. Anytime one of them bonks each other on the head, you hear like a comedic boing or something like that. That's not something the characters would hear, right? That's something that's just put there for effect for you specifically in the audience. And we're just going to go down to what they have to say about sound over in Careers in Film. It goes without saying that what a viewer sees in a film is inherently important to understanding its story. But what far fewer movie lovers realize is how their reaction to a film's narrative can be affected by sound. Now, sound is an incredibly broad term when it comes to cinema, as it can encompass sound design, sound editing, sound mixing, and score composition. But between all those aspects of sound can be found another way of looking at film theory. Let's break down one very simple scene in one of the most famous movies of all time, Jurassic Park. As a character, Grant and Malcolm, Tim, and Lex wait in their Jeeps, they notice a vibration in a cup of water. The tension and terror of this memorable scene begins well before we see the T-Rex, thanks to the sound design. That would be the T-Rex, right? The footsteps. Now, by just looking at the cup with no sound, the vibration could be made by any number of factors. But because the audience can hear the distinct rumbling footsteps of a dinosaur in the background just as the vibration occurs, it creates a moment of terrific horror and tension, as they know exactly who is about to show up. So just to give you some importance, a lesson on the importance of sound in a movie. And sound, again, pretty easily describable one, right? They don't break it down into, different type. Oh, we're going to throw in a charcuterie board or whatever they did with the lighting up there. Chiaroscuro. Yeah, I think I got it. Something like that. I think it's close enough. Okay, so we're going to get to our seventh element of film, which is editing. So, film editing is one of those things that usually goes unnoticed in Hollywood films. An editor's job is to make the story fluid and work as a guide for the audience. If they're bad at their job, the editing is noticeable, jerky, and takes you out of the experience. Here are some different kinds of editing. So there's a whole bunch of different kinds, but you got continuity, which is a collapse of time and space while preserving fluidity. Classical editing. This style jumps from long shots to medium shots to close-up for dramatic effect. Radical subjective continuity editing. Wow, that's a mouthful. Cuts of different time and space for dramatic effect. Thematic editing, edits that are driven by a particular theme. Associative editing, juxtapositions of two shots that when combined have meaning but separate they do not. Dialectic editing, edits drove by expressing a contradiction. An editor's job is hard. You can make it easier by planning your shots and making storyboards. Yeah, editing is pretty difficult. There's a lot of different ways to edit a single shot or a single scene in a movie, right? They have a tough time breaking that down into just a handful of different things. There's a lot of different ways they can go about it. But film editing goes unnoticed by many people because it's intended to make a story flow. However, film theorists understand the ways the following editing types impact films. Continuity, again, that's a collapsing of space and time while maintaining fluidity. We're going to dive more into these when I do my deep dive into editing. You got radical subjective continuity, classical editing, thematic editing, dialectic editing, and associative editing. And I believe they had one more over here, did they not? No, they got dialectic. They did. They got it right there. Cut shots to show a contradiction. Okay. And we'll just come back over here, see what they have to say about editing. Editing, where are you at? Editing. Every element of film theory has significance, but it's particularly important to not underestimate the power of the edit. Because at the end of the day, it's the film's editor who decides not only what the audience ultimately sees, but also the order in which they see it. And both can have huge implications for how a film is interpreted. Yeah, I guess if you needed an explanation for what editing is, when they shoot a film, I guess this would only apply to anybody out there who's recorded music, but they do this the same in a recording studio. Okay, well, we're going to have to go to the rant screen now. You got me there. This is your fault. So it's the same when you record a song. Hold on. When you shoot a movie, you record a song, you take multiple takes, right? I think we're all aware of that. You don't really have to be in the music industry or the film industry to know that that's a thing, right? You shoot a scene, you're going to take multiple takes, possibly from various different angles, the same that you would do in a recording studio. I worked in recording studios for 8-9 years. And the time, it's same thing, same process. When you're in a recording studio, you're recording the guitar tracks for a song, you do 2 or 3 takes, right? You might do 2 takes of the entire song. Then you'll focus on specific areas of the song that the guitarist might be having an issue with, or specific takes in the song that maybe the artist wants different variations of, so they can pick and choose what variation to put in the song later. Sometimes the producer will want that, right? Sometimes the producer, you'll be taking numerous takes of the same part of a song, just so the producer has 4 or 5 takes to choose from. I imagine they do the same thing in films. I haven't actually shot a film. I would be willing to bet a pretty penny that they do the same thing. If the director's like, yeah, hey, look, we got the shot, we got the scene, it looks good, I want to do it 2 or 3 more times, so I have an option of different camera angles or just different scenes to shoot from. In case one of these scenes got fucked up in the shooting process, or there was a guy walking in the background that we didn't see the first time, you always just get it shot at least twice, right? So you have a backup just in case, right? You might take multiple takes of a guitar to layer the guitar, right? So in the chorus, you might only have one guitar player in the band, but on the choruses, you want there to be the sound of a lot of guitars happening at once. So you'll record the song with maybe 2 different guitars, the same take over in multiple takes. Okay, so you can layer those takes on each other and make the guitar sound bigger, thicker, and fuller for the chorus, right? Same thing in a film. You're going to take, when they shoot a film, they take multiple shots of a scene. They do multiple scenes and multiple takes. Make sure they have a good assortment of things to choose from. Then when you come in to edit the film, same as when you're editing a song, you go into the studio, the editor comes in, usually with the producer. I'd imagine editors probably do it with the director. Maybe they do it with the producer too. I highly doubt they do it on their own, but maybe they do. I'm sure that some of them do. There's probably some editors in the business that are amazing, and directors are just like, fucking pick it. But either way, the editor comes in with the director and the producer. They sit down and they pick the shots for the scene that they like the best. Out of all the shots that they got to cover one scene, they pick those shots, and then the editor arranges those shots in the order that you, the audience, see them. Because again, when you're shooting a movie, they're not going to shoot the movie obviously in chronological order. They don't start by shooting the beginning of the film and then end by shooting the end. A lot of times they'll start over here, over there. They might have certain scenes that are shot in the jungle, so they'll go to the jungle and shoot on set or on-site shooting and shoot all of the scenes that they needed for the on-site shooting. Then they'll come back into the studio and shoot whatever they needed with this particular green screen. Okay, then they have a set that they need to shoot at, say like a house. They'll go over to the house and shoot all the scenes that they needed in the house. So they're shooting all the different parts of the film at different times. They come in with everything they got. Then they piece it together off of the various camera reels or the discs, whatever is, the thumb drives, whatever's holding the fucking film. Take it, choose the best shots for each scene, and then arrange those shots into the order that you, the audience, need to see them in to understand what's happening in the film. Same as we do in recording music. You will record all of the guitar at once, usually you record all the drums. Sometimes you'll just record everybody at once at the beginning to get backing tracks, and then you'll record all the drums, then you'll record bass, and you record guitars, and then you record the vocals after everything else. But you do them a lot of times in isolation, so you can get specific takes that are unadulterated, just the singer's voice, no guitars in the background. So you can pick and choose and make a master, what's called a comp track, which is all of the best takes, all of the best parts of the best takes put into one track, right? And that ends up being the track that the audience hears. You actually do the same thing in writing. Usually, not everybody does, but I do it when I write a story. When I write a story, I tend to write I have a 3,000 word story. I tend to write 4,000 words for a 3,000 word story, and maybe even 5,000 sometimes if I'm really going crazy. And then edit it down. Editing is cutting everything that doesn't need to be in there and rearranging parts of the story that might make more sense. There isn't even some brainstorming that goes into the editing part of it where it's like, do I really need to do this? Or maybe I should add this scene in there. Whatever it is, I'm moving the story around, cutting parts out, redoing parts so that it all fits better and flows more smoothly, right? So that's what editing in film is. And so if you didn't know that, now you know. So editing, how the movie is edited, how each scene, how the shots are put together in a scene to convey to the audience what is happening. That's essentially what editing is. We've already read there's various different kinds of editing that can be employed in any given scene. We're not going to go over every single one of those again because there's a few of them. And then we'll get to our very last element of film, which is mise en scène. I can still say that word. I'm so impressed with myself. Mise en scène. So what is this French sounding word here? Mise en scène is a French word that means placed on the stage. Everything that appears before the camera and how it's arranged on the screen to convey meaning in the film. So be smart when you're organizing furniture around a room. It matters. Mise en scène can be broken down into the following: placement around frame, face to camera, which would be the actor's actual how they're facing the camera, a quarter turn from the camera, half turn, 3/4 turn, full turn. Are you recording their back? Thought it was a burp, false alarm. Territorial space is a third thing to consider. What's in the background, the midground, and the foreground of a shot. Frame constraints. Are you shooting with a tight frame? Conveys subject intensity, importance, and inability to escape. Open frame conveys desolation, space, freedom, or significance. So we're gonna deep dive into all those various characteristics of mise en scène, but you're talking about placement, face to camera, territorial space, what's placed in the various different grounds of the scene, and then frame constraints, whether it's tight or open frame. Let's see if they have any more to give us over here at nfi.edu. Mise en scène is a French term meaning placed on the stage. It refers to the items in front of the camera and how they're arranged. Common terms used to describe mise en scène include placement around frame, face to camera, territorial space, and frame constraints. Tight for intensity, open for showing desolation or freedom. So they didn't really add anything to that. How about these people over here? Mise en scène. Now, film theory gets really interesting. Just as each of the above elements can help to inform the meaning of a film, so too can they do so as a whole, hence mise en scène. A quick and easy way to remember mise en scène is that it encompasses everything a viewer sees in the frame: lighting, decor, costumes, makeup, actor placement, and even type of shot. So this is important to note. This is a good point that this particular website is making that the other two didn't, that if you look it up, what they're saying is the truth. Everything that goes into making a scene, which includes the lighting, the decor, the costumes, the makeup, the actor placement, all of that is included as an aspect of mise en scène. But specifically the decor, costumes, makeup, actor placement, and then set placement of the set, everything that's around them, in the foreground, background, all of that. So while mise en scène is always considered in film theory, regardless of the importance that the filmmaker puts on it, some film directors are particularly known for their unique sense of this element. The Royal Tenenbaums is just one example of how meticulous Wes Anderson is, making sure that every single shot of his film provides a wealth of visual information for his audiences. Ever see a Wes Anderson film? They're nearly unmistakable precisely because of his eccentric and wholly distinctive mise en scène. That is true. Wes Anderson films, I feel like the color palettes for a lot of Wes Anderson films also really give Wes Anderson films away, because they're always kind of pastel colors, a little bit dulled out pastel colors, right? They're not super bright and vibrant, but it is still very colorful, right? So yeah, so that's mise en scène. Mise en scène is everything that you see in any particular shot. If we're just looking at this shot from the Royal Tenenbaums, mise en scène includes those balloons, it includes the colors that are being used, it includes everything that the actors are wearing, it includes where they're placed on screen. See, we're an over-the-shoulder shot for this young lady here. It includes where their faces are looking. As you can see from this shot, you got these three kids listening to their dad right here, Gene Hackman. who passed away recently, and then this fella right here who doesn't seem to give a fuck. All of that is included in mise en scène. Everything that's placed on the table in front of them, all a part of mise en scène, right? So, okay, there is your 8 elements of film. Important aspects to remember about all of them. You have type of film as your first element of film. That includes realism, classical, and formalism films. Second is shots. There's a long list of shots, a whole lot of them. We'll go into all of them much greater detail when I hit my deep dive into shots. Angles, there's 4 angles: eye level, high angle, low angle, and oblique angle, Dutch angle. Seeing if I can remember all of them before I have to look. Then there should be lighting, right? Okay, we got lighting, 4 different types of lighting. That includes high key lighting, low key lighting. I'm just going to keep saying charcuterie lighting, chiaroscuro lighting, and black silhouette black lighting. Did I get that? Chiaroscuro. Yeah, we're going to chiaroscuro, fine. I prefer charcuterie lighting, but that's what it is what it is. Okay. Then 5, color. There's saturated and desaturated colors. 6 was sound. Yes, sound, which includes diegetic sounds and non-diegetic sounds. Diegetic sounds are sounds that the actors would hear that appear on screen and are a part of the action of the film. Non-diegetic sounds are sounds that the actors would not hear that the audience only hears, right? Not from the action. Editing, all kinds of various different types of editing that can be employed. A lot of different editing techniques that can also be employed, but that's essentially how all the shots are put together to form the story. And last but not least, mise en scène, which is a whole variety of different things included in mise en scène. Traditionally, it's a placement around the frame, face to camera, territorial space, and frame constraints, right? So there is your 8 elements of film. And let's see, how do we do on time? Doing pretty awesome. 1 hour and 20 minutes. Doing good. So I did want to, like I said, really that's the bulk of what I wanted to go over today with this particular stream. Just make sure we hit all 8 elements of film and see if we can just get us a precursory amount of knowledge on each one of them before I do my deep dive streams into them later on at a later date, which will be starting not next week, but the week after. We'll be going deep dives into all of them. But I still wanted to continue streaming. We're going to keep on streaming because we did not get to watching this particular video last Friday. I had it lined up and we didn't get to it. This is Learn Film Analysis in 20 Films. Let's throw up the YouTube screen. And it's a pretty interesting video. I think it's very informative, so I did want to watch it. And so, yeah, that's what we'll be doing for the last 20 minutes of this particular stream, right? So we're just going to go over this guy's film. I'm still going to be watching it with you, and I'll be breaking whenever I see something that's important to note. I'll throw my 2 cents in there. Fair use laws and all that good mumbo jumbo. But yeah, let's go ahead and see what the Media Insider has to say.
Before we agree that a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, I'm going to need to know a little more.
I think different films can be enjoyed on many different levels. Some films are an in-depth character study that make us question our humanity or compassion. Some films are a visual experience, less about narrative and more about aesthetic, colour, cinematography, mise en scène. And of course, some films are just brain candy and simply offer diversion and delight. But for those of us who enjoy analysing film and interrogating it as a piece of art, it can be overwhelming just how much there is to take in and what to watch and what to look out for. In this list, I've tried to put together 20 films for you to hone your skills by signposting elements worthy of analysis. This definitely isn't my list of greatest films of all time, but each one will introduce you to a very specific aspect of film, from genre analysis to auteur study, decoding cinematography, and narrative breakdowns so you can start enjoying film analytically. Before we start, I just want to signpost you to my newly launched Patreon, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end of this video.
So, this is why I thought that this was such an interesting YouTube video. Is he's going to get each video, if he didn't understand exactly what he was saying, the purpose of this video is he's going to give us 20 films, and each film is going to be something that you can go watch in your spare time to help train you to spot a specific element in the film, one of the 8 elements we talked about, or a different kind of film theory. This would be, he's going to say this here will be a particularly good film for teaching you how to spot lighting. Okay, one of the 8 elements of film, or teaching you how to spot a narrative, teaching you how to watch a film through the lens of auteur theory, whatever it is, right? So he'll go through each one to let you know what it's best used for. Let's see if we can spot our 8 elements in there.
What better way to start this list of films to analyze than by looking at one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, Alfred Hitchcock. I very easily could have put Vertigo or The Birds on this list, but there are several specific reasons why we're looking at Psycho first. A film that is brazen enough to kill off the leading star early on. Psycho is a great starting place for film analysis because Hitchcock has an incredibly motivated cinematic style that is difficult to miss. That's not to say it's simplistic, far from it, but every single camera movement, every prop, close-up, every side glance is done with such clear intent that you can easily...
So, just to kind of quiz you, if we're analyzing a film pertaining to, like, we're looking at the film to analyze what Hitchcock means from specific shots, that would obviously be in the shot category of the 8 elements. If we're looking at specific props that he's using within the film, then we're going to be looking at mise en scène. If we're looking at side glances that the actors are giving, that would also be, I think, an aspect of mise en scène.
Notice and start questioning, why do you suppose he's shot from that high up? Why are there so many mirrors? What do they represent? The subtlety and motivation behind his camera work will instantly be familiar to David Fincher fans for the same reason.
If you're analyzing camera work, you're going to be analyzing shots and angles, right?
All you've got to do is learn to notice and question why. There's no better place to do this than in the infamous shower scene, a masterclass in camera work, editing and sound.
Okay, remember, or just to note, he also said a masterclass, not just in camera angles and shots, but also for sound design and, well, sound in general, and editing too.
Next, we're going to look...
I have never seen this movie, Dunkirk, but I heard it's super awesome. I definitely need to check it out. Have seen Psycho before, and it's alright, it's okay. I could see how it was scary back in those days, but nowadays, it's a bit boring compared to what we have out as far as horror movies go.
At narrative structure, so I'd like to recommend Dunkirk by Christopher Nolan.
So, in case you didn't hear it over me talking, Dunkirk is good for analyzing narrative structure.
I don't think this is his masterpiece, that belongs to Interstellar. But this film will introduce you to a complex, non-linear structure that demonstrates how time can be manipulated through editing. I don't really want to explain the mechanics in too much detail because part of the joy is working it out. But essentially, Dunkirk tells 3 stories, each in completely different timescales. As you watch it, pay close attention to how the sequencing, that's literally the order of scenes, builds a sense of tension, peaking at the actual rescue attempt. It's also a film to make special effort to watch in IMAX, another staple of Nolan's films as he uses the format to its fullest cinematically.
Grave of the Fireflies. I've been wanting to see this for a long time. I've heard really good things about this anime. I don't know if you're watching Cutie Patootie, but let me know if you've seen Grave of the Fireflies, because if not, then we need to sit down and watch this. My girlfriend's a huge fan of anime. I am too. I like certain anime. She likes anime way more than me. She watches all kinds of crazy animes. Every time I wake up and come out to the living room, she's watching some new, different anime I've never heard about. It's about some kind of crazy shit. But if you haven't seen Grave of the Fireflies, we should check that out together. I heard it's really, really good.
Grave of the Fireflies is on this list as your introduction to anime as a serious film medium. In my opinion, Studio Ghibli's finest work, it's an anti-war film that explores the impact of conflict
Oh, it's Studio Ghibli. That's awesome. We definitely need to watch it then.
on a brother and sister. Their remarkable resilience in the face of setback after setback makes their tragic ending even more heartbreaking. Watch this film and consider the impact of the medium itself. Would it be as effective if it weren't animated? For me, the contrast of the childhood optimism that we associate with animated movies with the cold realities of war makes the message far more powerful, and the children all the more vulnerable. For budding screenwriters,
Locke. I have never heard of this. I know that's Tom Hardy. He's a really awesome actor. Yeah, we'll have to see what this is about.
among you, my recommendation is Locke, a film that can't hide
Oh, screenwriting. Okay.
behind special effects or big budget set pieces.
Are you okay?
Okay. Okay.
Cat, please.
The whole film is Tom Hardy fighting fires, a marital breakdown, missing a football game with his son, coordinating a concrete delivery remotely, all from his car phone. This will be your first character study of a man who is duty bound to a fault. The dialogue is razor sharp, so as you watch this film, pay close attention to how writer-director Stephen Knight and solo actor Tom Hardy create a portrait of a man who only knows how to manage life's challenges with a cold, calculative pragmatism.
That is my decision I have made. I have not behaved in the right way with this woman at all. I have behaved in a way that isn't like me. But now I am going to do the right thing.
How do you sell silence?
That sounds interesting. The whole thing is shot from his car, and it's just him on a phone. That's really interesting. Crazy. Okay, let's continue. The Artist, 2011.
Cinema to a contemporary audience. It's no small feat. Many discount anything in black and white, let alone without speech. Well, the answer comes in the form of The Artist. This film is a love letter to early cinema, just as the talkies were becoming the new norm.
Perfect! Beautiful. Can you give me just one more?
But by taking a step back to a time where so much more story had to be told with performance and cinematography, you'll hone your ability to identify visual storytelling. It's also a great place to start identifying the Kuleshov effect in editing. Pay close attention to how every cut connects the shot that precedes it and follows it. Every cut is effectively cause and effect. Cause and effect.
Why don't you own apartment
Got an
buildings?
ad here.
Seriously, why don't you own these
Fucking
big apartment
ads.
buildings? And I
Okay. That's really interesting. That's a cool. I'm gonna have to check that out too. Yeah, I will say that is a good point that he makes there. One thing that you definitely notice if you've ever watched any silent films, is they really do have to make up for the fact that they can't speak by almost kind of overacting, right? There's a lot more that has to go into a performance in the sense of what kind of emotions you're conveying in body language. If you watch a few silent films, which I'll admit, I haven't like sat down and had like a silent film marathon or anything, but it would be really good practice for picking up on more visual cues and avoiding needing to use any sort of sound for dialogue, especially for knowing how the characters are feeling in a story. Anyway, Sound of Metal.
Next, we're going to focus on sound analysis, and our case study is Sound of Metal. Just as POV shots are often used to show the audience what a character can see and position us with them, this film uses fantastic sound design to offer us the perspective of a musician who is losing their hearing.
Wow, that hits
It makes for an uncomfortable watch at times, so as you're watching, pay attention to how a sense of panic is built through the use of first-person sound, camera work, and performance.
Okay.
That's interesting. So I definitely got to check that out. I didn't know that was a movie. Yeah, for those that don't know, I mean, anybody watching this, I worked in recording studios for 8, 9 years and eventually had to stop when I lost my hearing. So nowadays, whenever I go out, and a lot of times I just leave my hearing aids at home because I don't want to talk to people. And it gives me an excuse to not have to have conversations with people I don't know, which is a bad habit. It's a bad habit. At some point, though, I got quite used to and started enjoying being in a nice little world of silence. I'm not entirely deaf. I'm like down 60% in one ear and 30% in the other, which is still a very big difference. There was I'm going to pull back to my rant screen. There was a really odd thing that happens. I don't know if anybody else who's watching this has lost their hearing or anything, but when I first lost my hearing, I'm going to stare at you while I talk because my mom said I need to do that more. So when I first lost my hearing, there was an odd thing that happened with my right ear. And my right ear is where I have lost most of my hearing. I'm 60% down, which is also why I put my headphone in that ear when I'm talking to you, because I got a delay in my interface and the delay doesn't mess with me as much. I can still hear my voice to make sure that I'm actually still on, the mic's still moving. I got my audio meters up too, so I can make sure that that's there. But mostly the delay in my interface doesn't fuck with me because it's in an ear that can't really hear anyway. So in that ear, all it sounds like is it's mostly just mumbles is all I hear. But anyways, that ear lost about 60% of its hearing. And when that first happened, there was a very stark difference when I would listen to music where everything was kind of hard panned to the left. And over time, my brain made up that difference and slowly recorrected my hearing. So instead of like, I lost that hearing. So when I would listen to music, everything that's happening on this side of the song, and you think of the pan of a song, like the audible space that a song takes place in, everything that's happening in this section of the song on the right side is lower in volume, right? So everything sounds louder over here. So the whole song in my headphones sounds like it's panned to the left. And my brain, and this happens with people who lose their hearing in one ear. You can look it up. Your brain will recorrect for that, essentially making up the difference by kind of just pretending that there's things there that isn't there. I don't really know how the entire process works, but it's fucking crazy because I remember living through it and everything was hard pans and slowly panned back to the middle. And now when I listen to music, everything seems to be panned normally. Fucking crazy, dude. That's so wild. Anyways, yeah, I definitely have experienced that though. So I don't know if I need to watch a movie about it, but I've definitely gotten to a point where everything was fine, rocking out, making music, recording and mixing every single day in a studio. And then at some point having the musicians I'm working with not liking my mixes and being like, God, a bunch of crybaby fucks, these musicians. And then turns out that I was destroying people's mixes because my hearing was gone and I didn't know it. So anyways, very interesting. That sounds like that would probably be a great film for studying sound design though. So anyways, let's continue. My rant's over. Horse Girl. Let's see what this is about.
Here we go now.
Horse Girl is a film about a woman whose realities come into question as her dreams seep into her daily life. Which is not new in film, but what I loved about it was how it was executed here. Almost all films you watch in the cinema are coherent and make sense because of something we call continuity editing. Long-established editing techniques such as match on action, eyeline match, the 180-degree rule, that all mask each cut and allow you to understand time and space in places that you've never actually been. Horse Girl uses these rules and breaks them intentionally to disorientate the audience and lead them as frantic as the main character. While you watch, pay close attention to your sense of time and space within a scene and how your expectations for how each scene will play out are usually dashed because of these rules being broken. The ultimate effect will be disorientation and confusion.
It's not a dream.
How do you know about that dream? How do you know about that? I've never told you that.
Hey, kid. Hey, kid.
How good are you?
Anyone who's been to my channel before will know about my appreciation for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. But why this western rather than The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, or The Searchers? Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid marks the end of the classic western era. By the time this film came out, audience tastes were beginning to change, and the narrative is as much a farewell to the genre as it is the Day of the Bandit at the turn of the 20th century.
What happened to the old bank? It was beautiful. People kept robbing it. Small price to pay for beauty.
While you watch, look out for this theme of finality and the end of things. Pay attention to how the inevitable end of the duo's life of crime is foreshadowed throughout, and then compare your notes to my analysis, which you can watch here.
Hey, wait a minute. What? You didn't see LaFours out there, did you? LaFours? No. Oh, good. For a moment there, I thought we were in trouble.
A little turn. Now side to side. Other people can sing.
Dancer in the Dark is a film that was introduced to me as a film student, and it has stayed with me ever since. It's on this list because it's a postmodern genre study of the traditional musical, but there is nothing conventional about this Lars von Trier film, a name that you'll come to know more as you explore cinema. It plays on all the conventions we expect to see in a musical: big set pieces, choreography, lots of colour, but it tells it from the perspective of a young factory worker who lives for music but is slowly going blind. The contrast between this increasingly bleak existence and idealized musical spectacle illustrates the unrealistic romance of musicals. In stunning scenes like this, she is literally transported from the realist documentary-esque style that von Trier is known for into the conventions that we expect of the genre.
He said von Trier. Lars von Trier. If any of you don't know who Lars von Trier is, he's somewhat of an enigma. He's a hard guy to understand. He's made some really crazy fucking movies that have been very controversial. He's a very controversial name in filmmaking. Very avant-garde, artsy-fartsy kind of films that some people don't particularly like. But a lot of his films have been very disturbing. I think some of the more disturbing ones was the Depression trilogy, Nymphomaniac, Antichrist, and Melancholia. The House That Jack Built is a good serial killer one that's pretty brutal. And there was another one in there. Was it Lars von Trier? No, I don't think it was him that did Irreversible. Either way, Lars von Trier, yeah, that was somebody else. But Lars von Trier has done, some pretty interesting films. He's a very interesting filmmaker. This actually, although it isn't my style of film, that's a very interesting concept. That's really cool how they contrast that beauty, that fakeness of musicals, the fantasy of musicals, with this very harsh and brutal, almost realism kind of reality. This would be, a very interesting study for picking up on realism in a film.
Clatter, crash, clack, rocket, sound, rattle, clang, crack, sat, whack, bang!
It's as if we experience her hyper-reality. This film will change the way you look at musicals and acts as a fantastic introduction to one of cinema's most controversial directors. While we're on the topic of music, this film has the most famous two notes of all time. But that's not why it's on the list.
Bit of fun trivia. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. This is on my list of top 5 favorite movies ever, Jaws. When I saw this as a kid, it scared me out of the water so fucking fast. And I grew up in Wyoming. There was no way that some shark was going to come and kill my ass in Wyoming. I still didn't give a fuck. I still did not swim in a single fucking lake. I sat in the bathtub after this movie, freaked out that some giant shark was going to come out of it. You can ask my cutie pie, I still don't swim in the ocean. She's from Hawaii. And when we went to visit Hawaii, I was like, that's cool, but I'm staying on the island, like nowhere near the beach. I'm good. I ain't going to go in the water. Jaws is in the water. Sharks in the water. Fucking, this is a great movie. I even named my very first dog Jaws because of this movie.
Spielberg is the man responsible for what we now recognize as the modern blockbuster, and this is the film that started it all. The reason this film is on the list is it will show you how to pace a film. Spielberg is known for his long takes, and this is just one of the tools that he uses to draw out a scene and leave the audience hanging on the edge of their seat in anticipation for this. Films very often get pacing wrong, and they feel either too slow or too fast, but Jaws will show you that great films know how each beat plays with the audience. Pay attention to your awareness of when things are about to go wrong or when there's looming danger, and how Spielberg teases the audience with pacing.
Hey you guys okay over there?
Does your internet bill keep getting higher? That's
These
because promo
motherfuckers.
pricing is
Like, we
full
don't buy
of
enough.
surprises. At Google Fiber, there's
Need more advertisements.
It's undeniable that there is an element of voyeurism about cinema, and no film explores this quality quite as explicitly as Hitchcock's Rear Window.
There's nothing to see.
There is some. I've seen it through that window.
This will be your introduction to the concept of the male gaze, the widely accepted principle that the camera lens offers us a heterosexual male perspective. And in this case, we literally have that with the first-person viewpoint of the male character who's being directed by a male filmmaker. As you watch, try to think of the camera as an actual person, whose eyes we are looking through. What does that say about gender and the character's attitudes towards women? What does it say about men? How much of your perspective of the world has been learned through this male gaze? To appreciate truly minimalist, understated filmmaking, I recommend Portrait of a Lady on Fire. The lack of any score and minimal dialogue helps us to focus on the story communicated primarily through the eyes.
Regardez. Si vous me regardez, qui je regarde moi?
While you watch, pay close attention to how director Celine Sciamma builds layers and layers of mystery around the main character by revealing them through tidbits of information but never fully revealing her for the first 20 minutes. By the time we do eventually see them, we are as curious about her as the painter in the film. In contrast to Rear Window, it's also a great example of the female gaze. A film about expectations put on women, shown from a female character's perspective by a female director. Look out for the female gaze in the camera work, and how their developing relationship is represented in the portrait as it goes from abstract to intimate. I'm sure you've heard this saying, show don't tell. Well, this film exemplifies just that. I'd like to recommend Children of Men for its visual storytelling.
Yeah. So, just on this note, Children of Men is an awesome movie. If you haven't seen that, highly recommend this movie. Those other two are a little bit older. I hadn't seen those. But this one's a good one. This Clive Owen, one of the better films he's been in.
Don't really know how the world got into this bleak dystopian state, or how governments and society have adapted, but we see subtle clues to it everywhere, like here. And here. Watch this film and really take in the background, not just the action in the foreground. You'll be amazed at just how much world building you'll discover simply through the mise-en-scène.
I was just going to say, he stole the words out of my mouth. This fucking guy taking the spotlight. So yeah, this sounds like a good movie for being able to analyze mise-en-scène. If you're looking at the foreground and the background and what that all says about the movie and each scene, you're analyzing mise-en-scène. So Children of Men, good for mise-en-scène analysis.
There are cinematography conventions in mainstream films that you may not even be aware of, but you will definitely notice them when they are broken. The rule of thirds, eyeline match, open framing. Nowhere is breaking these rules more evident than in the films of the French New Wave, a film movement all about...
So, want to know if they're talking about the rule of thirds, eyeline, talking about the height of the camera in comparison to the eyes. They're speaking on shots, right? So it sounds like he's about to say this is a good film for analyzing shots. But let's take a gander. Let's see what he says.
About breaking the rules and defying the Hollywood system of filmmaking. And as a jumping on point for this film movement, we'll be watching Cleo from 5 to 7. It's not as radical as other new wave films we could have looked at, but as you watch, take note of whenever the camera does something different. Really take note of what it does and doesn't do, and it will demonstrate to you how exciting variation and difference from the norm can be.
Vous habitez chez vos parents?
We've already talked about a range of outstanding filmmakers in this list, each of whom could be described as an auteur. But one of the most exciting and clearly identifiable cinematic signatures belongs to Bong Joon-ho, the Korean director.
Gonna go with Bong Joon-ho. Earlier in the film, he mentioned auteur theory and going over some movie that'll give you a good introduction to auteur theory. I was wondering who he was gonna pick because there are so many different film directors that you could probably consider auteur filmmakers. The obvious one that comes to my mind, just because I enjoy his movies so much, would be like Quentin Tarantino. Is, right there at the top of the pack for auteur filmmaking, particularly since he really does author his films. He actually writes the screenplays and then does the directing, handpicks the cast himself, does the casting, sometimes even writes the movie with specific actors in mind. He plays such a heavy hands in authoring the movies. He would be a good candidate for auteur filmmaking as well. But Bong Joon-ho would also be a really good pick. Let's see what he has to say about Bong Joon-ho.
Director that became a household name when Parasite won Best Film a few years ago. I've followed him since Snowpiercer, which is an ideal jumping on point if he's new to you. It's in English, it's incredibly fast paced, but most importantly, it illustrates how a director can have a set style and a theme that they explore across most of their movies. In Bong Joon-ho's case, he explores issues surrounding class divides as told through outrageous analogies. And in this film, the train with the higher classes at the front and the lower classes at the back is our playground.
I am a hat, you are a shoe. I belong on the head, you belong on the foot. Yes, so it is.
It's filled with dark humour and an aesthetic that you'll come to expect if you follow this up with viewings of Parasite and Okja. I'd recommend you try and watch all of his back catalogue and ask yourself, what quantifies a Bong Joon-ho film?
Yeah, I was just going to say, when it comes to auteur theory and what I've read about it, you definitely want to analyze a director's entire filmography before you really deep dive into any one particular movie of his to try to spot the things that he continuously does in each film. Yeah, you want to make sure you do that, so...
In fact, I challenge you to ask this of each of your favourite directors. For me, that's probably Tarantino. Now, this might be a controversial opinion, but Inglourious Basterds is my favourite of his films. We're actually going to look at it because of two specific scenes. Firstly, the interrogation of the farmer at the very beginning, and secondly...
This is one of my favorite films, too. I know there's a reason I like this guy. Like I said, I've watched Media Insider. I watched a lot of his films over these last few weeks while preparing for various different streams I'm going to do about film. And some of his takes I agree with. Some of them, they make me kind of roll my eyes. But this is a take of his that no eye rolling involved here, man. I think this is a great choice. I mean, there is other Quentin Tarantino movies that I like slightly better, but Inglourious Basterds is such an awesome film. And this bar film right here and the interrogation at the beginning of the movie are some of the best scenes I've ever seen in a movie.
The undercover interrogation by the SS officer in the second act. Both of these scenes are truly gripping, despite comprising mostly of cinema's most boring sequence of shots. Shot, reverse shot. As you watch, pay close attention to how Tarantino uses lingering shots of each speaker and slight changes to our proximity to them to communicate the balance of power in their exchange.
So it sounds like here, when analyzing these two scenes from Inglourious Basterds, he's saying this would be a great time to, again, explore shots and angles.
Das war ein Scherz. Scherz. Nein, natürlich störe ich.
These are some of the tensest moments that I can think of in recent films, and I dare you to watch it without holding your breath. Your task is to identify how Tarantino constructs this quality.
these sons of bitches.
Amadeus is a truly accessible entry into period dramas. The mise-en-scène, themes, and play on relationships is authentically period drama, but the language is very contemporary.
They're all so beautiful. Why don't I have 3 heads?
This is funny.
It's a biopic of the composer Mozart, as told by his jealous and nowhere near as talented counterpart Salieri. This makes for such an interesting case study because we are positioned as an audience to view each event from the perspective of the outsider, Salieri, looking in. He goes from revering Mozart to hating him for his talent. The effect is Mozart carries a godlike quality unobtainable to the rest of us, and it's beautifully captured in scenes like this.
That was Mozart. That.
Consider how different the film would have been had it been told from Mozart's perspective. I don't think he would feel nearly as untouchable had we not been positioned as an outsider. "2001: A Space Odyssey" is the...
You knew this was going to be on this list somewhere, right? This is on everybody's list. 2001: Space Odyssey.
Absolute definition of a real science fiction. I'm not talking about this.
Nothing will stop the return of the Sith!
Or this. I'm talking about actual technology pushed to the limits, meaning of life, what else is out there in the universe, science fiction. The film is fantastic for analysis, as it's so open to interpretation. What does the monolith mean? What is director Kubrick saying about man and machine in the interactions with Hal?
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
While you watch it, pay special attention to the camera work. It's precise, measured, and lifeless, almost like the technology that has allowed man to explore the stars. Next, we're going to be looking at colour in film, and the case study is Her.
Here we go. Finally, I was wondering if he was ever going to get to color in film, right? Because we went over sound, we went over multiple films that would be good for mise-en-scène and shots and angles. There was a couple in there that you could probably say worked for analyzing different types of film, a couple in there for editing, but we had yet to see at least one good one for lighting and color. So he said this is for color.
Colour is without doubt one of the most powerful tools in a filmmaker's arsenal. Perhaps it's because colour is largely a universal language that goes beyond just film, but into fashion, architecture, all kinds of culture. What this means is when we see blue, or red, or an absence of colour, it has the innate ability to make us feel something, even if we aren't sure why. In Her, pay attention to how colour is used to reflect Joaquin Phoenix's emotional state and feelings towards the artificial intelligence that he falls in love with. Different shades of red and different degrees of saturation make this a fascinating study of colour.
Seven Samurai. This is a classic.
It's only a matter of time once you start taking film seriously before you'll discover Akira Kurosawa. Seven Samurai is a fairly simple narrative about a group of samurai, obviously, who become employed to protect a village against bandits. It's a narrative that's been replayed countless times in Hollywood, but never as well as it is here. Watch this film for a masterclass in blocking, the art of arranging actors' prop setting within a scene.
Just real quick, blocking, props, arrangement of actors in a scene, that again would all fall under mise-en-scène.
That you'll come to see quite quickly with Kurosawa films is the way that he uses movement and space to communicate just as much as dialogue and action. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the final battle scene, which you'll be analysing on a shot-to-shot basis.
So?
Try to think beyond simply how each shot is framed, but instead consider how the players within each scene move and use the space within them. So there are your 20 films, guys. I would love to hear what you think of them and your observations for each one. Do a little bit of an analysis and leave your comments below. Now, as I mentioned before, I've just started up on Patreon, and it's my way of ensuring that I can deliver these videos more regularly and provide more support to those of you out there who are studying film and media. If you're able to check out the page and pledge some support, I'd be incredibly grateful. But otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.
Okay, so there you have it. There is his Patreon. Go check that out if you're interested in learning more. I'll probably be checking it out. I definitely like this guy's videos. Like I said, I've watched a lot of them. So, you know, if you enjoyed that, show this guy a little bit of love, because we'll be going over a lot of his films as we go through our own Film Buff Fridays every stream. So, another burp. Okay, there you have it. There is the 8 elements of film. I already closed out, but let's see if I can do it without it. First, there was types of film: realism, classical, formalism. Then there were shots, a lot of different kinds of shots. Then there was camera angles. Ooh, there was eye level, high angle, low angle, and oblique angle. Lighting. Oh, I'm going to fuck up the lighting. Lighting was high key, low key, chiaroscuro. Chiaroscuro, I can't believe I remembered it. Look at me, you guys. Fuck me. Chiaroscuro and black lighting or silhouette lighting. After lighting, color. There is color, and color came in 2 forms: saturated and desaturated. After color, it wasn't editing, it was sound. It was sound. And sound came in 2 flavors: diegetic and non-diegetic sounds. Then there was editing, and then mise en scène. And both editing and mise en scène had a lot of different characteristics attributed to them. But those are your 8 elements of sound. We went over each one enough that you should at least know at this point what element somebody's talking about when they're discussing a particular component of a film or talking about a particular scene. You'll be able to take these elements and watch a movie tonight, tomorrow. Think about these elements as you're watching the film. And then you'll be able to maybe go back, make a list of those 20 films that he said to watch, and watch them with the characteristics that he said to keep in mind, and kind of sharpen your blade on those particular films. So when we come back next week, next Friday, we can jump back into this. I think next Friday, actually. Yeah, next Friday, I'm going over elements of storytelling, which will be a little bit more focused on narrative type things. Elements that you want to consider when you are critiquing either the narrative of a movie or critiquing an actual story. So there you have it. There's our Film Buff Fridays happening on Thursdays. It is important to note, let's see, what did I have for you? Oh yeah, I won't be back on Monday, so we can take this card and shove it aside. Mental Health Monday will be canceled next week. I will be in Oklahoma with my family, so hopefully we'll be meeting back next time on next Tuesday. I got a Terrifying Tuesdays for you guys that I'm super stoked about. It'll be the Reddit Forest Ranger story series. We're going to go over that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't look it up. Keep it a secret for yourself until you come back next Tuesday, and I will give you the rundown. If we don't make it to next Tuesday, we'll save that for the week after, and then I'll just see you guys on Wildlife Wednesday for a new episode about different animals. I think next Wednesday we're going over some of my favorite newly discovered animals in 2024, so that'll be kind of cool. Anyways, that's it for the day. I actually went over my time. That's no good. I got to go do some packing, and then I got to write down the last 4 note cards that I have for next month, and so I got a lot that I need to do tonight, but it was fun. I have way too much fun talking about films on this stream. Even if there's nobody here to watch, I still enjoy myself. If you did watch this on YouTube, thank you for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the content. And maybe check out my Twitch channel where you can come and talk with me live while we're actually going over this. That was kind of one of the main reasons for me doing this on Twitch in a live stream, was I thought it'd be real fun to have people to chat with about these particular topics. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. Everybody who sees this, I hope you have and or had a very great Easter weekend. And I will see you guys next Tuesday for more Terrifying Tuesdays. Thank you very much, and I'll see you then. Bye.